I'm gonna huff, and I'm gonna puff, and I'm gonna blow that house down. You ready? Hey, your house stayed up! How about that?
Hi, I'm Kim Adams.
And I'm Tom Gannon.
And we're from Barron Park Preschool in Palo Alto.
We're happy that you joined us today.
Yeah, you've made it to It Might Get Messy, supporting creativity and creative thinking in early learning.
This is a topic that Kim and I have both had a passion for decades, and we're happy to share with you sort of what we've tried, what we're learning, and what we hope to do.
And probably some messy ideas as well.
Definitely messy.
Okay, so it might get messy. I like to always start with thinking about the end in mind, right? So if you came to this workshop looking for messy, fun, creative ideas that you can do with your children, you did come to the right place. However, I think it's really important that when you work with young children that you be mindful of the why behind the what that we do. And unfortunately, I have to start with a little bit of bad news. Well, kind of a lot of bad news. So according to the CDC, diagnoses of ADHD, obesity, depression, and anxiety are all on the rise. In fact, really sad, the suicide rate amongst children ages 10 to 14 has nearly tripled from 2007 to 2017. There's not good news for creativity either. Interestingly, there was a study done by a researcher named George Land, and he talks about how he was asked by NASA to create a test that would help them to figure out people's creativity so that they could put the right people into the right jobs. So he created this test, and it was actually very successful. And so he and his partners in research decided it would be really interesting to give it to children. So they gave this test a sample size of 1,600 kids, so relatively large, ages 4 and 5. And what they found was that 98% of children tested at genius levels for creativity, 98%. They turned this into a longitudinal study. And so 5 years later, they tested those same children. So now they're 9 and 10-year-olds. And what they found was only 30% of that population tested at genius levels for creativity. They gave that test 5 years later. And so 14, 15-year-olds, and what they found was only 12% tested at that genius level for creativity. And they know that the adult sampling size is only 2%. Another researcher named Kung-Hee Kim has discovered that children's ages, like kindergarten through 12th grade, children's performance on the most reliable test for creativity, called the Torrance test for creativity, has declined more than a full standard deviation in a generation. So what that looks like is 85% of today's children are less creative than their 1980s counterparts. And the most striking decline occurred in the youngest children. Kim links this to insufficient time for free play and unstructured time, among some other things. Play is critically linked to creativity and innovation. And so I think we should reflect for a few minutes on the benefits of play, because you guys, in order to be champions for play, in order to avoid these negative outcomes, we need to be able to speak to what is happening when kids are playing and when their creativity is free to develop. So the first thing I'd like you to do is take a minute and reflect back on your childhood. Try and go back as far as you can. I'm going to play a short video that will talk you through this exercise. Let's take a minute and think about an early play memory, a really early play memory, and think about what you were doing and who you were with, maybe what time of year it was. Were you inside? Were you outside? Can you identify any of the senses you were experiencing, the smells and the textures, maybe even the tastes? Okay, so if I were to ask you to do this activity again, and I were to ask you, okay, close your eyes and get relaxed and think back and tell me about your favorite worksheet you ever did, or your favorite math test, or your history exam, you probably couldn't do that, right? You probably couldn't conjure it up. Our brains are wired to remember the play memory and not the worksheet memory. And there's a lot of reasons for this. How many of your early play memories took place in a classroom? Not that many, probably. Maybe some of our younger educators, I'm finding more and more as I go out and speak, usually live to audiences, that some of the newer teachers actually grew up in a time where they were in childcare more. People like me, we ran free outside, no grown-up supervision, right? But some of the memories that people do share are playing outside, riding bikes, roller skating, building things, working with Legos, making mud pies, playing group games like hide and seek, doll play, jump rope, games that involve with balls and sand play and running around the neighborhood. And my favorite, playing until the street lights came on and it was time to go home. Lots of time. And there was one thing that was missing. It was the adults. The adults were missing, you guys. There were no adults. But even the ones who were in childcare settings and have shared things back, what's missing from the play memory is an adult watching. Sometimes the play memories involve an adult playing with or like gardening or cooking with someone. But very rarely is there a memory of a grown-up watching and intervening and telling you to do something or not do something. That wasn't play, okay? As adults, we could probably look at those play memories, especially as educators, and we could say, we could do a DRDP on it, right? Like we could say, these are the developmental domains that were being addressed in this type of play, right? What were they learning? But we need to also understand what we're talking about when we're talking about play and real play. Because like I said, a grown-up telling kids what to do, that might not actually be considered play. So then, what is real play? Well, I have found these 5 characteristics of play to be super helpful. I found them in an article in Psychology Today by Dr. Peter Gray. I think these 5 characteristics really capture play. But as we go through them, think for yourself, do I agree with this? And if you do, maybe try and identify how might you include more of this type of play in your environment. The first characteristic Peter Gray identifies is that play is self-chosen and self-directed.
The second characteristic is that play is an activity which the means are more valued than the ends. So, process over product. Play has structure or rules which are not dictated by physical necessity, but emanate from the minds of the players. You might think it's odd that I would choose this slide of rough and tumble play to talk about rules or structure, but in fact, this has a lot of rules and structure embedded within the play. The children will give feedback if somebody gets too rough or if things go too far, because they want the play to continue. This play, and all play, must have the structure and rules, but they must come from the minds of the players. The fourth characteristic of play is that it is imaginative, non-literal, mentally removed in some way from real or serious life. And finally, play involves an active, alert, but non-stressed frame of mind. I love this reminder that play involves a non-stressed frame of mind. We know from brain research that the parts of the brains responsible for creativity and deep learning cannot be accessed if a person is under great stress.
So what does all this have to do with creativity? Why are we talking about play? Well, we know that not having enough time for play can have a negative impact on creativity, but there are many benefits.
Let's take a look at this short video that illustrates some of the benefits that play has on brain development and ultimately on creativity. Each region of the brain consists of a highly sophisticated neurological network of cells, dendrites, and nerves, which interconnect one portion of the brain to another. The brain changes physiologically as a result of experience. New dendrites are formed every day, hooking new information to old experiences. As the child experiences an event for the first time, water scooped and poured down a tube, for instance, new dendrites have to be formed. As other information is gained, the water from the tube continues to travel downhill when it leaves the tube, the brain looks to associate the information to existing dendrites. In the future, a child will discover that water always flows downhill because of gravity, and the speed that the water travels depends on the amount of force working on it. The experience of play changes the connections of the neurons at the front end of your brain, and without play experiences, those neurons aren't changed, according to Sergio Pellis at the University of Lethbridge, Canada. Why is it important to change the connections at the front of the brain? Well, it is here in the prefrontal cortex where critical thinking, self-regulation, empathy, creativity, problem solving, and higher order thinking skills can take place. We used to believe play was practice for adulthood, but experts have come to believe play has another important role. The function of play is to build prosocial brains, brains that know how to interact with others in positive ways, according to Jack Panskep at Washington State University. Here we observe children sharing time, space, and materials, working independently and interdependently with the clay. This beautifully coordinated interaction is building the framework for future collaboration with others.
So play is that ideal state of mind for creativity and learning. The fear of failure is absent, and players feel free to incorporate new sources of information and experiment with new ways of doing things. During play, children use all of their senses to take in information. Play changes the connections at the front end of the brain, right? That prefrontal cortex. And as the video mentions, this is where critical thinking, self-regulation, empathy, problem solving, higher order thinking skills, and creativity take place, right? Why is creativity so important for 21st century learners? When we define creativity, it's the ability to make new things or think of new ideas, right? And it doesn't have to be an art thing. A lot of the ideas that you'll see later in this workshop, they are kind of with art medium, but creativity is is solving a problem or making a new connection, right? And innovation is different than creativity. Innovation is taking something that already exists and making something new out of it. But the creative process is at the heart of innovation.
I'd like to invite Tom to take a few minutes now and talk about creativity in education, and more specifically, creativity in early learning environments.
Thanks, Kim. That's a really widely used definition for creativity. And in my studies in creativity, I've also come across another definition that works really well with younger children. And that is creativity with young children is using common elements in uncommon ways, which creates a sense of surprise for the onlooker. So let's take a look at creativity in early learning and ways we can support it and ways we can weave it into children getting messy. As teachers, a lot of us are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy for thinking skills. Up until recently, the highest level of thinking was critical thinking. And recently, there has been a revision to the Bloom's taxonomy, which makes creativity, or being able to create something, the highest order of thinking skills. And this is simply because often it requires the individual to evaluate and be critical in their thinking when they are creating. As educators in the early learning classroom, we have an opportunity to be able to support children's creative thinking while they're getting messy. For the most part, our education system was developed and in some cases still sort of stuck in the industrial age. And what we need to do is to be able to move our approaches to support the conceptual age, which we are in now. The global economy thrives on creativity and innovation. This reminds me of a quote from Steve Jobs, who said, "The Macintosh turned out so well because people working on it were musicians and artists and poets and historians who also happened to be excellent computer scientists." All right, now I want everyone to do this little activity with me. Take out a piece of paper and something to write with, and go ahead and write down your first name. All right, pretty easy, right? Something we do often. Now, put your writing implement into your other hand, and now write your name. A lot more difficult, right? So we have a preference on which hand we like to write with, much like our preferences when it comes to supporting creativity. Let's take a look at this next slide, and I'll show you what I mean. A lot of us fall into one of these four areas when it comes to our preference for creativity and for creative problem solving. Perhaps you're a clarifier. Maybe you really like to ask a lot of questions, gather a lot of detail, and really understand the landscape before you want to move forward. Or perhaps you're an ideator. You find yourself easily coming up with new ideas, new ways of thinking about things. Or perhaps you're a developer. You like to make plans. You want to make some lists. You want to put dates on the calendar and tasks to be done. Or perhaps you're an implementer. You just want to get the ball rolling. Enough of this planning. Let's just get things started. The details will work themselves out as we move forward. Well, kids have a preference too. So I know we all say we want to support creativity, but we actually have a bias against children's behaviors who don't match our preferences. So let's do this little activity. Take a moment to look at the words on this list. These are traits or behaviors that most people have. We have some of them, not all of them. But take a look at them and sort of see which ones you value in children in your classroom. Okay. Now let's take a look at this next slide. All right, so now the list has been divided into two groups, some words in gray and some words in orange. Are you relating to either one of those lists differently? Well, let's remove one of the lists. All right. So these are the behaviors that we find in creative people. And these can be really challenging, especially in young children. Take, for example, unwilling to accept mere say-so. How frustrating is it when a child keeps asking you over and over, or they actually need to go and try something that you told them not to do because they need to find out for themselves? Or the child who is still exploring their sense of humor in the middle of story time, or the child who has independent thinking at nap time, who just wants to keep talking or keep exploring different ideas. These are challenging behaviors for sure. This is just one more way things might get messy when we support creativity in young children. It's our job to meet these children where they're at. Now here's a framework for creativity. We all are in some sort of environment, and let's take our classroom as the environment. So the environment has influence over the people, and the people are the children and us. And with that, it's our confidence in being creative. It's our ideas that we bring to any situation. And then it's the process. It's the materials that are available, the time that we give children to work with their own ideas. And then the people and the processes develop products, ideas, stories, artwork, music. At Barron Park Preschool, what we really focus on is making sure the environment is supportive of the people and the process and their products. And when we talk about environment, we mean the psychological environment and the physical environment. So the psychological environment has a direct relationship and impact on fostering children's creativity. When the environment is safe, when we make relationships a priority, and when adults understand their place as being guides and not the boss, it's best for children. And then the physical environment. The environment has a direct relationship to fostering creativity when it is appealing to the senses and to all the senses: sight, smell, sound. When it's organized, safe, and when it helps children learn through exploration and play. Supporting play and being playful is not only important for children, but it's important for adults too. Our brains are wired to be inspired. Research shows that innovative thinking increases blood flow, makes neurological connections, and even increases brain matter. This is great news for not only kids, but for us as well. So seeing how important play and playfulness is to creativity and innovation, not just for children, but for adults as well, we have a responsibility and an opportunity to support creativity in the classroom. I want to leave you with a quote from Sir Ken Robinson, which says, "Creativity now is as important in education as literacy, and we should treat it with the same status."
Thank you, Tom. You know, I really love how you highlighted that sometimes creative behaviors can get messy. A lot of the way that we manage behaviors has a direct application to how safe and how welcomed a person feels in our environment. What you're looking at right now is a graphic that describes the Barron Park Preschool teaching style, loosely modeled after Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that safe environment with the loving, trusting, and supportive relationships at the bottom of the pyramid, the base and the foundation for all other learning, has to be in place. And then we can get to enriching an environment for exploration and learning, can have some of those creative activities set out, the maybe riskier play, loose parts, and only after we have that base in place and then the environment enriched do we get to that higher order thinking of creativity, creative expression, and even social emotional learning. Okay, so let's move on and take a look at how we might set up some activities that will support this creative process.
When we want to set up some activities for kids, we actually should have a plan. Okay, this is the what. That was all the why, and now this is the what we do. So plan activities that are open-ended. They should have multiple outcomes, and they should be appealing to all of the senses. keep in mind that it actually might get messy. Like it really does get messy. And so I think it's important as a team of educators where you work that you have some conversations about this and what you're going to do. I think these are some important questions to ask yourselves. What are some of our roadblocks? What would get in the way from you having a mud pit like this at your school? I already know some of those roadblocks, okay? But how might the teachers respond? What could we do? What can we do to allow this kind of messy play? Because it's really good for kids. So I encourage you to have those hard conversations together and to have them with the parents. It's everybody, okay? So since it might get messy, keep in mind, you'll need to have a setup. There's gonna be a process, and there's definitely gonna be a cleanup. Here's some helpful things that you can have when you're working with these messy activities. A couple things to highlight would be plastic shower curtains make really great table coverings. So do clear plastic garbage bags. If you just kind of cut them up the side and open them up, and if you missed the table with some water, that thing will stick right to the table. It's pretty awesome, and then it's an easy cleanup if you want to throw it away. Lots of newspaper, butcher paper, baby wipes. I have mine here. Towels, I have mine here because we probably need them. Drying racks. There's a picture of an art drying rack that's collapsible, and we got that at IKEA. You can get them on Amazon. And then having things for cleaning up after your paints and your messy stuff. I put soapy water in the sensory table, the water table, and some scrub brushes. And you know who cleans our paint cups? The kids. Because they like nothing better than using the paints than scrubbing, washing dishes. I don't know why we don't let them do it more. Okay, so just some things to keep in mind. When we set up our activities, it is nice to set them up in a way that is an invitation or a provocation. And so put them out in a way that the kids can kind of come as they want. Use the materials. There can be some teachers helping. You'll see in the videos that there's some of these I actually am helping to do with the kids, but it's not a must do. It's an invitation. Okay, here's an example of a simple setup provocation. These are just some branches we clipped off of one of our flowering bushes at the school. I set out some liquid watercolor paints that were sort of in the same color family as those plant clippings, and some paper. You'll see there's towels out there because this is a wet thing. We have this is a water table. It's kind of hard to see, but we actually have like a plastic tray that goes over it so that if there's spills, they can be cleaned up. And that's it. We don't tell the children, we don't go over and coach them. We don't tell them how to draw a branch. We do not teach them how to draw a flower. It's just an invitation. Some children might end up with something that looks something like a flower, but often it's just them exploring with the paint and the flowers are just there. So this is just one idea. Okay. The other thing that I want to share with you is that we want to make all this learning visible, this play learning. And so we make something that we just call activity write-ups or process write-ups. And I have created some for almost all of the activities I'm going to demo today. If you want me to send you PDFs of those, you can email me. At the end, there's a slide with my email address, and I would be happy to send you some of those so you can see. But basically, this is not a Making Learning Visible workshop. That's a different workshop. But this is just something that we have that describes the activity, gives a picture, and gives some of the learning outcomes that might happen. You'll notice that there's also maybe on some of these, I'll put the DRDP measures that we might notice when someone is engaging with this activity. Okay, so the first activity I'm going to highlight, I'm actually going to stop my share and reposition my camera so that you can see a little demonstration of the activity. And then I have some videos of kids doing these activities. So you can kind of see what some of these look like in kind of real life with the real deal. Okay, so this first one is called BioColor Resists. And this one, it does need to be, we do need to use biocolors. This is what the biocolors. They're not regular tempera paints, and tempera paints don't work for this. These have like a little bit of a plasticity to them, and you'll see why. So the first thing that you do is I just have a piece of paper, and I'm using white BioColor paint because I want you to really be able to see this. You can use you need two different colors really. But if I put the white paint on, and I want to, I'm switching hands because when I do this for the kids, I try and use my non-dominant hand. And I don't want to set up models for kids. That's why. And I also will not typically draw something that looks like it represents anything. It's usually just some kind of design or pattern or something like that. Okay, so I've done my white paint. You can't really see it because it's white on white. That's part of the magic. Okay, and then we take our second color of BioColor. You'll see in the video that that the paper is taped down on a piece of plexiglass when I'm doing this with the kids, because they're going to be using this squeegee, and we don't want the paper moving around. But for this purpose, I just have it here. The grown-up, if you're working with young kids, it's probably the grown-up's going to do this. We're gonna do this part for them. We're gonna squeeze a small line of a different colored paint at the top. The kids should be choosing their colors, and then we're gonna help them or allow them to use the squeegee, and they're gonna pull that bead of paint down over their whole page. And you see what's happened here? You see that the white paint stayed behind, like it resisted the blue paint. I don't know why the BioColor works this way, but it's pretty awesome, right? And you can do this with any color that they want. I'm going to show you a quick video of the kids doing this activity. The color in the background, I mean the hue of the the recording, sorry. It looks weird because this was actually taken outside, and it was during the fires of last summer, and the air quality was okay to be outside this day, but I don't know if you guys had this weird thing happen, but like the sun was covered with this smoke layer way up high, and it gave us like almost like an eclipse during the day, but that's why it looks so strange outside. But here is a little video of the kids doing this activity.
It's hard to see it, but when we put the color, you'll be able to see it. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
And what color did you want to do?
Blue.
Both people want to do blue. Okay, so I'm going to put a little line of blue at the top.
Blue.
Yes, we'll do one at a time. Okay, Daphne?
Yeah.
Okay. Ready, Daphne?
Yeah.
What? What happened? It's like magic. You ready, Daph?
Yeah.
Okay, hold this one. Just a minute. I'll put a little blue at the top of yours too. You said blue, right?
Yeah.
Micah? Ready?
I think, yeah.
Okay,
When
move
they're
it.
done, I'm going to do it again.
You do?
With red, with blue. Mine is bigger than that.
Okay, so you get a sense of what that looks like. The next activity is encouraging you to think outside the paintbrush box. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is one video of some kids using some alternative things for painting. This one, this photo those are rosemary branches, and I just stripped the small leaves off the bottom of the branch, and then they use it to paint. And this one's really cool because they're getting multi-sensory input there with the smell and the painting at the same time. Here is a video of some kids using some other kinds of branches for painting, and see, it does get messy.
It's okay, it'll wash off. Uh-oh, you got on your face. Oh.
Okay. So in addition to using branches, I encourage you to just find unusual things to paint with. This is a gigantic potato masher I got at a restaurant supply store that you can dip and paint and make prints. This is like a little mini brush mop. Those make some nice painting. Tubes of any kind dipped and painted. We save all kinds of cardboard tubes, but the thicker kind, like these are pretty thick cardboard. They work really well for that. And then one of my favorites is fly swatter paint. And I really love this because it's kind of floppy and makes a loud noise, and it makes a big splash when you dip it in the paint. And and this is a helpful hint. I bring out the fly swatter paint. There's two times I bring out that fly swatter paint. One is when I am at the end of my gallon of tempera paint, I cut the top of the bottle off, and then this fits in the bottom and use up all that stuff at the bottom of the jug that sometimes is hard to get out. And the other time I bring these out is when I have some kids who are exploring hitting or kind of being, using things in a way that might be hitting people. So I give them something that they can really explore with that is fun and silly and doesn't hurt anybody. Okay. And then the next thing I would like you to think about is your paintbrushes themselves. So we can modify our paintbrushes and we can change the whole experience of painting by simply taping our regular brush to a stick and making it a long brush. Now, I am using this tape called gaff tape, Gaff. If you get nothing else out of this workshop, you guys, this stuff is game changing for preschool teachers. It is kind of like, what do you call that? Duct tape, but the sticky stuff, it doesn't leave behind any residue. It's strong like that, and it's kind of fabric like that. So you can really kind of pull it, and it holds in place really well. And it's perfect for stuff like this, but it's also great for hanging things on walls because it doesn't damage your paint. It's awesome. They use these in theater. So here's a long brush that I made right now. Pretty simple. This is a piece of bamboo garden stake, but you can make them really long. And I want to show you some videos of a couple examples of the kids actually using the long brushes. And yes, that kid is standing on a table. Again, I mentioned that we do kind of allow for some riskier behavior. And also, he is barefooted. And if you might be able to see in one of these shots that I was using the bottom of one of those paint tubs in this one. But do you see how it's a whole different experience, and he has to engage his whole core. It's a gross motor experience to do painting with long brushes. And here's another example. If you don't have a low enough ceiling, or you don't want to have to deal with putting paper up on your ceiling, you can do it at an easel. I set up a step stool for them to stand on and reach. And again, they have to use those, it's not just an arm, it's bigger and a core strength.
Why is this the wash of it?
Kim, I need to go grab the paper towels.
And I really miss the days that the parents could come in and explore. This is a normal morning where we would have
as you think with that long stick, huh?
Parents come in every day, and they would get to use the activities as well. That time will come, I think. And now for an even sillier long brush. Okay, so this one was quite an adventure. So I don't know if you know what that is, but I will tell you, it is my Christmas tree. I stripped off all of the bottom branches, and they're using the very tip, and it's heavy because it's actually a tree. Maybe you can see, but I had to wrap it in some newsprint and tape because the tree was pretty sappy from cutting the branches off. But think outside the box, you guys. Use things in different ways. Okay, the next thing I want to demo, so I'm gonna stop screen share and bring you back over to the camera, is magnet marble painting. Now, I'm pretty sure that most of you are familiar with regular marble painting. What I wanted to show you is, this would be our traditional marble painting, is this what I'm using to do the painting on. And it is a artist's stretch canvas. Okay, usually you paint on this side. But we like to use these because they are a good weight. They're lightweight to hold. They have a nice frame, and they kind of have a nice noise to it too. Okay, so we're getting multiple senses engaged here. It can be done on these small ones or even bigger size. But when we decide that we want to not just do the traditional painting with the marble, but to actually use magnetic force, we use a magnet wand, and we encourage them to go under the paper, and look what happens here. Yeah, it's spinning and sliding, and they can explore magnetic force this way. Okay, and they will definitely try doing this. Okay, so what's going to happen when they do this? They're going to take it off like that, and they're going to get messy, and you're going to have your baby wipes nearby just like that. I will also tell you, helpful hint, use a plastic spoon when you're doing the magnet balls. Why? Because I learned the hard way that metal spoons, the balls stick to them, and so you can't get them off onto your paper. Okay. So our next, I'm going to show you a quick video, probably not show the whole thing, but here's some kids doing that too while I get my next thing set up.
Rez.
I told you they were going to go over and try a different way. So you get the idea there. So now what you see here is a jar, and it is full of gravel. This is like fish tank gravel, but any kind of little rocks or sandal work, and a knee-high nylon. Okay, high-tech project. And I am doing this alone, so I'm stretching it over a jar, or a cup would work. And then we would have the kids just scoop the gravel into the sock, okay? And we are making something to paint with. All right, all that gravel to the bottom. There you go. And we'll tie a little knot there. And now what you have is what we like to call boing paint. Here is a little share of the kids doing that.
Oh yeah. Why is it big? Why are you doing this? Is there beans inside?
Gravel.
Wow.
It's gravel.
This looks like a sock.
Pretty cool. Okay, and the next little video is, these are called glue sun catchers. And so you can see that we have some white glue, or even better, clear glue, and it's poured into a plastic lid, like a big yogurt container, sour cream, or cottage cheese container. And the kids, we drop some liquid watercolor, and the kids swirl it around. And when they dry, and then they can add beads or embellishment, when they dry, they look like this. So you can kind of see they're sort of see-through if they're clear glue. And we hang them in the classroom, and the sun comes through, and they're actually quite lovely. Okay, our next activity to share with you is something called chalk prints. This is a kind of a new favorite of mine. We're going to be using artist street chalk. This is like, I guess you'd see it this way. It's kind of like for professional sidewalk chalk artists. It's a little pricey, but it's worth it and it lasts a long time. You can do a version of it with regular sidewalk chalk, but I'm telling you, these vibrant colors really make it exciting. So you pour just a little bit of water at the bottom of a pan. I really love these little tiny sheet pans. We also got these at a restaurant supply store. Business Costco has them as well. And the children are invited to scrape the chalk, and it floats on top of the water, and they can use a popsicle stick and scrape it. But what we found recently is that a little screen works even better. So they just scrape it, and can you see the chalk? It's floating on top of the water. Let me try, maybe a little darker color will help us see that. And they really love this. And this is like just watching it kind of float on top of the water is cool enough. All right. But then we can make a print from it. And we just take a piece of paper and they just set it in the water, just like right in there. Okay. And when you pick it up, you'll see that the chalk stays behind, and it makes this really cool chalk print. So that is another fun one to try with your kids. All right. Okay. This is a video of some of the kids doing this activity. While they do that, I'm going to get a couple other ones set up for us. Okay. And here's another video of using alternative things to paint with. These are cars and balls.
Here, you want me to put it under here? Whoop! That's right in the paint.
I think maybe we could put some wipies up there too.
For hands?
I'm noticing. That works. Sure. You can wipe it on the paper.
Okay. And the next thing I just wanted to highlight was, if you've ever seen, these are biodegradable packing peanuts. We get them in our Amazon boxes. You can get them at any kind of shipping store or a FedEx or a office supply store. And my hands are really dirty because of the chalk. And you know what? That's what it's about. It might get messy. These, they dissolve in water. So if you were to dip them, this is a little plate of water. If you dip them in water, they stick. They melt a little bit and they get a little gummy, and see that? And sometimes I put colored water out, kind of liquid watercolors to dip these in, and it makes kind of an interesting, but they can stack on each other and you can make things out of them. But I recently put them out for the children in just kind of in our water area. And I gave them just some colored water and some bowls and these things. And they just experimented with what it was like when they dissolved in the water. And honestly, the droppers of colored water were kind of bigger attraction than even the melting things. They just really loved mixing colors. And that's what I notice about kids, is that they want to revisit the same things over and over again. Okay, our next one, and we're almost our last one, actually it might be our last one, is another one that I think is pretty cool and a sort of a new discovery for us. And it is called sandpaper transfers. So the children are given a piece of coarse sandpaper and crayons, and they just do their mark making right on the sandpaper, I encourage them to push down hard if they can. It gets a better transfer, but also it's kind of good for their fine motor muscles. Any kinds of colors you want, right? And there we go. And then we use a, let's see here. I'm gonna put it up on a box so I don't get the table. We use white cotton fabric, the cheap stuff. I think this actually probably used to be a sheet that we cut into pieces. And we lay that on top, and then a grown-up, of course, uses a hot iron. And when you put the iron on top of, do you see what's happening here? We're just heating up, and the crayon is melting from the coarse sandpaper, and it's transferring onto the fabric. And so their project is now on a piece of fabric. And then you can imagine all the things you could do with this, right? Isn't that cool? And it's dry kind of right away. So there's that. All right. But you don't have to do all kinds of, the kids will use the same materials over and over again in creative ways, even if we aren't setting out these new ways of painting, whatever, because they'll figure it out on their own. And I kind of want to end with this short video.
What is happening over here?
We're trying with our foot. I'm using my other foot to hold the cat. This is fun. That's so fun. I'm making it so cool.
Oh my goodness.
How about purple? Purple. Ready. Thanks.
Kids will always find a way to be creative.
As we head into our question and answer time, we wanted to suggest a few questions to consider. The first one is, what did you notice about how you were feeling when I was demonstrating an activity, or we were talking about a facet of creativity or showing videos? What are some takeaways you might have from the information presented? And lastly, what questions might you have for us? Thank you so much for spending this time with us. As I mentioned, we're going to stick around for the question and answer. But if you have other questions for us or you want to reach us, here are the ways that we can be found on all our socials. Play Bear and Park is my Facebook page, and my Instagram, just Play Bear and Park with no spaces. And then you'll see our 2 email addresses. You could reach me or Tom. And then the last 2 are websites. The first one is playbearandpark.com. That would be how you could reach me, and deals more with like speaking and workshops and that sort of thing. But the very last one, bearandparkpreschool.com, is our school's website. And there's a page on there just for educators that has some interesting articles and links. And so if you'd like, you could check that out too. Again, we want to thank you, and we look forward to chatting soon.
sad.
Oh, so by painting them a picture,
So they can be sad.
so they can't be sad? Well, isn't that an amazing thing to do on a Friday morning?